We often believe that great relationships and great sex should come naturally. After all, movies and social media feed us carefully curated versions of idealized romances, perfectly toned bodies, and perfectly steamy sex. Yet, in real life, romantic relationships and the sex that comes with them can feel anything but deeply affirming and satisfying. To help us understand the keys to fostering genuine relational and sexual connection, I'm joined by a top notch guest whose work as a sexologist, researcher, and professor has earned her the title of the Internet's resident sexpert. Today, we'll focus on this listener's real life question. My partner and I dated a lot before getting together. He's an awesome match for me on so many levels, but our sexual connection has never been great. I've tried to talk to him about this, but he gets really defensive, like I'm blaming him, but I'm not. This sounds bad, but I secretly compare our sex to what I've had in prior relationships. I don't know what to do because I really love him. Can you help? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are imperfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Please note, as this episode does contain sexual content and sensitive information, please take care before proceeding. And please note that you will be able to find resources in the show notes. Now let's move to today's fabulous guest, Dr. Tara. Dr. Tara, it's such a joy to have you on the show with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to jump in.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. So before we do the jumping into this very steamy topic, can you tell our listeners just a little bit about what makes you, you?
What makes me is the shame-free, unapologetic, open-minded stance I have towards human sexuality. Whatever situation you're experiencing, whatever problems you have, whatever kinks you're into, I'm here to listen, to accept, and to help you move towards your goal. So that is what's uniquely different about me. I have zero judgment. I have heard everything and anything about what people are into. And I mean, people are into very, very unique things.
Well, that's humanity, isn't it? That we are all unique. And I'm curious because what you're talking about isn't mainstream. And for many people, that can bring up anxiety, it can bring up fear, it can bring up blame, shame, all of these things. So I'm wondering, I know that I grew up very Catholic and I'm no longer a practicing Catholic, but that gets really wired into you very early on. And you have to work, if you want to work, to free yourself in different areas. It takes a lot of effort and patience and, self-compassion and compassion from other people. Could you tell me, if you don't mind, did you grow up in a very sex open environment where your parents may have really talked about sexuality openly? Or is this something that came to you later where you realized, wow, I really want to work on this in myself and thus help other people? What's your backstory?
I worked on it extensively, very hard to get here. My background, actually not too different from you. I went to an all-girls Catholic school. We always joke about, well, how did that turn out? I'm here talking about butt sex online. But I grew up in Thailand. So I grew up in Bangkok with my very loving family, but very sexually repressive. My parents are very religious. They're Buddhists, they're practicing Buddhists, and they are religious Buddhist people. We used to go to the temple 2, 3 times a week growing up. We were praying every day, meditating every day, and I had a mix of Buddhism and Catholicism in in my in my head growing up. So if you can imagine the sexual repression that I went through, as much as I am very much a faith-based person, I still pray every day, I meditate, I believe in God. I do think that organized religions have limitations and tend to be sexually repressive. So when I became a sex expert or a certified sexologist, I learned to separate the faith, the idea of faith and the things that I believe in from the things that I didn't feel like was healthy messages from basically what I think is healthy messages and a healthy way to live considering your sexual well being. So I grew up with all of that as a background. But then I moved abroad. So I went to high school in Europe and then I came to America to pursue graduate degree. And when I came to America, I lived in LA, and LA or Los Angeles is one of the most sexually open places,
Yes,
I
yeah.
think, on earth. So that was a big culture shock. But at the same time, I was studying human communication, but particularly in relationships. What I had learned was that relationships are the most important thing in life based on the longitudinal study from Harvard that shows social relationships are basically the predictor of life satisfaction. Like by the end of life, what people wish they had was better, closer, stronger social relationships. So I studied relationships, but then after investigating deeper into relationships, I learned that one universal problem that people have, regardless of their gender, sexual orientation, religion, whether from how much money they make, who they voted for, is a sex problem. And so I then dedicated my adult life studying sexuality, sexual satisfaction, and sexual communication. I have now been a professor of sexual communication at Cal State University for the last 10 years and just published my book, How Do You Like It? A Guide for Getting What You Want in Bed last year. So everything's going well in terms of teaching the mass to become more sex positive.
Thank you for that really wonderful background. It tells me a lot about you, about your journey, makes you very relatable because again, and this is for, listeners, if this resonates with you, if you grew up in a more sexually repressive environment, or maybe if you have sexual trauma in your background, this journey is not easy. It takes, some effort, takes a lot of tender, loving care. So moving forward to find your way and what's right for you. And it's funny, Dr. Tara, I went to an all girls school, but mine was limited high school. So that part you can sit, the forces can really come down on you when you're in a natural quest, as we are, especially when we're young, to explore and learn and grow. But when there are very clear dictates being, forced to that this is right and this is wrong, whatever that right or wrong,
Mhm.
that dichotomous thinking might be, can really take us away from learning to pay attention to our needs, to our preferences
Mm.
on all levels, to our wants. And I'm not just talking sexual here, I'm talking relational here, where we might not know because we grew up in a bubble of sorts, a black and white kind of bubble. God wants you to do this. And I too believe very much in God and spirituality and in divinity, all of that. But I also, and I believe in the importance of having healthy human relationships from the inside out, ones that feel sexually gratifying, emotionally gratifying, mentally gratifying,
Mhm.
psychologically gratifying, all of those pieces, because if they don't, then we live in this. And it sounds like the person who wrote in is pretty much feeling this. She's saying, oh, my partner checks all of these boxes over here. But this one of the sexual connection, feeling that passion isn't there, how can I fix it? And that often happens, as you know, in intimate relationships where maybe the connection was there at first. Maybe there was in the dating or limerence stage or infatuation stage. Maybe it was things were hot and heavy and perfect and passionate. But then, as what my clients often say, when things get real, it can
Mhm.
get much more difficult to have a sex life that feels gratifying. So I'm going to lean into you as our sexpert to help us understand a little more about what's going on behind the scenes and how people, all listeners, can find ways to move forward, especially
Mhm.
if their partner is interested in doing that journey with them, which is a critical piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. I love this question. So thank you so much for the person that wrote in because it is one of the most universal situations I have ever observed in my personal and professional career. Many people have asked me about this situation. Many people around the world experience this. I've been with my partner 10 years. I've been with my partner 15 years. We no longer have sex, or when we have sex, it's just okay. What's wrong with us? What's wrong with me? So I really appreciate this question. First off, let's dissect what sexual connection means and where sexual connection comes from. When people think of sexual connection, they perhaps think of movies. They perhaps think of the pieces of media they have consumed and what it should look like. So they might think of the movie scene where, you meet eyes and then you just can't take your hands off of each other. You start making out and touching everywhere. And then all of a sudden, he lifts your dress. And then, like, you have sex and you both orgasm at the same time. Because we all know what sex looks like in movies. So if you think that sexual connection can only look like that, you are setting yourself up for failure because that is one out of hundreds of ways you can establish sexual connection, or you can say there is a sexual connection between you and your partner. So, first off, let's move that into the bin because that is just one of many ways you can observe a couple having sexual connection. So, where does sexual connection come from? There's two facets to think about. The first one is sexual chemistry, the other one is sexual compatibility. Now, sexual chemistry depends on which school of thought you subscribe to. Sexual chemistry is natural. A lot of people will say that you either have it or you don't. You meet someone and you're intrigued by them, you're drawn by them, and you continue to feel drawn towards them. That's chemistry. You have attraction for someone. That's chemistry. We're not all attracted to everybody, right? That's why oftentimes you'll hear people say, like, oh, that's not my type. Like, oh, yeah, I can see he's cute, like, but he's not my type, right? So people have certain people that they're drawn to and that they are attracted to and they have chemistry with. So that's the first portion of sexual connection is something that you can't necessarily control. You either have the chemistry or you don't have the chemistry. Now, can it be buried after years and years of living a logistics based life together? Yes. But if you can look in the past into when you first met and maybe the first year of your relationship, did you have it? You did? Okay, you do have chemistry. Maybe it's buried into logistics based life. Now, chemistry is one part, and it's you have it or you don't have chemistry. The other part is the part that you can build. The other part is sexual compatibility. What does it mean to be sexually compatible with someone? When we say, oh, like you and I are so sexually compatible, what I mean is we are similar in terms of preferences, desires, communication style, and other miscellaneous sexual exploration expectations. These things can be talked about. These things can be agreed upon. These things can be evolved, can be changed. But safe to assume that with this person that wrote in the question, the chemistry has been there from the early on. Maybe it was buried through, a lifelong journey of living together, maybe having children. The compatibility is what they need to work on in order to refuel or reignite their
I
sexual connection.
I have a question for you about the chemistry piece.
Mm-hmm.
I have noticed something slightly different. I'd like your take on it. I agree with you that sometimes you meet someone and the draw to them is just like
Mm-hmm.
this huge magnet. And it's like, oh my goodness, wow, that kind of deep, deep chemistry that just draws you each to each other. Sometimes it's just one way, I imagine. But I have also noticed that sometimes, and I've seen this with some of my clients where they'll meet someone, and I've experienced this, before I was married, where you would meet someone and they didn't really seem your cup of tea. But as you learn their quirks or their sense of humor or their touch feels really special, something like that, that it can actually create a chemistry where a person you didn't necessarily find attractive through a picture or a first meeting. But if they're genuinely good people and, your kind of soul energy is matching, I think that that creates sometimes, not always, but I think it can really create almost like this magical soul chemistry. What do you think of that? What do you call that? And what pocket does it fit under?
I absolutely think that chemistry is either you have it or you don't, but there's no
Hmm.
timeline.
Hmm.
As in, like, the example that you give is you meet someone, you immediately have chemistry for them. And that's cool. But then you can also meet someone for 1, 2, 3 months and then realize that you do have chemistry for each other. But ultimately, it's either you have it or you don't. There have been people that I have helped that basically have been together 3 years, 5 years, and realize they have never had chemistry.
Mm.
So I still think it's either you have it or you don't, but there's no timeline. As in, like, you could have realized it later.
Later on.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. That
Yeah.
aligns with
Yeah.
my experience that
Yeah.
it can actually be unearthed, which is, I think, one of the big problems with online dating or just that first date. I'm not
Yeah.
talking, listeners, about someone you meet and there are red flags. They're disrespectful, they're unkind, they're, all of those, any of those things. I'm talking, and Dr. Tower, it sounds like we're in accord on this, that sometimes if someone seems just nice, but that you're missing that chemistry, that if you give it a little bit of time, and as
Mhm.
you're saying, it may not develop into chemistry, it may develop into a friendship. But I think sometimes if we allow it to unfold, and that's one of the things that social media movies, they don't often show that aspect of relationships. It's more about that, "Oh, let's meet in a bar. Oh my god, let's go to the room and have sex," kind of thing, or, "Oh,
Mhm.
let me tear your clothes off," and that it stays that way forever. And instead, I really believe that if we feed it, we can find that chemistry if it's there and then
Yes.
continue to feed it. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's
I
keep
do
going.
love that. And it's called the slow burn relationship.
Yeah.
I think magazines are now starting to talk about the slow burn relationship and how desirable that can be, especially for this generation, because we're always on our phones and we're online dating. Everything is fast, fast, fast. So actually, the generation that I teach is Gen Z in college. They are craving that slow burn connection,
Mhm.
yearning and participating in courtship in a slightly different way because they are also very sick and tired of, being on technology all the time and seeing people online. So I think a slow burn relationship is beautiful and definitely works for a lot of people who also need time. Not everyone can participate in that like fast paced dating regimen. Some people need their time. Some people also don't really want to jump into something quickly that way. So, yeah, you can definitely unearth, like you said, the sexual chemistry later on in dating once you also open yourself up to receiving it.
Beautifully said, because I think so many people are highly defended and they don't realize they're defended. So
Mhm,
if you don't, and with the listener's question, we don't know how long they've been together. And she
mhm.
did say something maybe that the partner is defensive when she brings it up. And I think that that defensiveness often is in front of underlying fear, self-worth issues, maybe trauma, maybe having been shamed in other relationships. We don't know what it is, but anytime there's defensiveness, can we move into that piece of how this question, because I think this too is a common issue in relationships where the minute one partner, I don't care which one it is, feels as though they're doing it wrong, that they're not enough, they're this or that, that does not stimulate any sexual energy. It actually makes the person turn
No.
inward and shut down. Would you agree?
Totally, absolutely. Giving sexual feedback is an art. There's art and science to giving sex related feedback because sex is so vulnerable. Talking about sex is a hard thing to do, yet is necessary to do. In my study based on 5,000 individual, I found that sexual communication is the number one predictor of long-term sexual satisfaction. So if you and your partner have never ever talked about sex, it's time to start because sexual communication is truly the most important thing in your sex life. Not even the act of having sex itself. It's talking about your sex life, talking about exploration, talking about preferences, and then talking about how you're feeling at the moment and where you want to go. All of these things are extremely important, and that's why I recommend people doing sexy check-ins, which is checking in, talking about your sex life together once a month. And I have questions like, you know, how did you feel about our sex life this last month? Is there anything I can do to contribute to that being better next month? Is there anything we can do together? Is there anything you'd like to explore that I can help with or partake in? So these are some of the questions that you can ask. But even before we go there, let's talk about the prerequisite because talking about sex is hard. And I'm realistic enough to understand, saying to people, oh, you should talk about sex is never going to work because they're like, oh, it's too hard. We're not going to do it. So the prerequisite to having this conversation is also first making sure that there is levity in the space, the context where this conversation is brought up. You can't have conversations about sex in bed. You can't have conversations about sex after a fight or during a fight. You can't have conversations about sex if this relationship is in that time very stressful. There has to be some sort of playfulness or levity or relaxedness in the situation where this topic is brought up. Let's say you are relaxed and it's Sunday and you're going on a walk, maybe going on a hike. This could be a time to bring it up. How you would bring it up is just like any positive psychologist will tell you, is the shit sandwich. You bring up something positive about your sex life and them first. Then you give this feedback with a potential solution because nobody likes criticism with no solution. And then also end with something positive. So, positive feedback, positive. So, I've recently, not too long ago, talked to my partner about dirty talk, about how, like, we can spice it up if he was to take a class on dirty talk because he's great at movements techniques, but when it comes to verbal communication, not a lot of men are not great with verbal communication. So when it comes to verbal communication, I wanted more stimulation that way, audible stimulation. So how did I bring that up? I first said, I love our sex life. I think we do have a great sex life. We've been traveling so much. So I would say, the frequency isn't necessarily there like before, because before we were home all the time in LA and now we travel all over the world. But I do love our sex life. And every time we have like finally make time to sexually connect, it's amazing. So I just want to say that like while many people may struggle with connecting sexually, like you and I actually have amazing sex. So thank you for that. I've been talking to people, I've been listening to a lot of podcast episodes about dirty talk recently. And there was a dirty talk expert, Sir Marvelous, that told me, like, oh, with having sex in long term relationships, one thing that can really spice it up and it's free and it's something that anyone can do is these particular like dirty talk. And particularly I was talking about like ownership type of dirty talk. So I mentioned listening to this podcast and I just think, yeah, I mean, I would love if you like listen to his podcast or maybe even take his class, just to get some ideas of what you can say to me next time in bed, because I think that would really be a turn on. Like that would be I think that would be so sexy and it would be a fun thing to explore. And then I end with, also I just want to thank you that like that the fact that we have this kind of relationship that I can suggest something like this and you are actively listening and wanting to, you know, improve or wanting to partake in a sexual exploration that I'm interested in. I just think that's awesome. Like you are so awesome. So thank you for listening and being open to my suggestion. I love that. And I love you. Done.
Beautiful, beautiful, Dr. Tara. And listeners, if this sounds foreign to you, one of the things I do is to remind people, as you say, Dr. Tara, our ability to talk about sexuality is a predictor of sexual relationship satisfaction, just like our ability to talk about money with a partner. They're sensitive topics, child rearing with a partner. Anything that we can talk about, we're more likely to be able to manage. That's a paraphrase of, what Mr. Rogers would say, anything that is human is mentionable and anything that's mentionable is manageable. So if we
Mhm.
take it down to that level of realizing that if we don't make sex taboo and we make it something as simple as, this is the metaphor I like to use, think of it like you're cooking. We don't have any problem saying, honey, can I have some more salt or pepper or some more hot sauce? Or, ooh, something a little more sweet here? Of course, because that's part of humanity. We want to eat and we want to enjoy what we eat. Just as part of being human, for most people, not all, is wanting sex and wanting to enjoy sex and wanting that in an intimate relationship to bring you closer together. Yes, it's about pleasure, but it's also about intimacy and all of that wonderful yumminess that comes from this piece of a relationship that we tend to not share with other
Mhm.
relationships. It tends to be, I'm not talking about people who are non-monogamous. I'm talking about the people who are, this is where they get their sexual needs met. So thank you for giving us such a personal example of how you would do the sandwich. And I think the sandwich concept is always wonderful. I use the peanut butter sandwich. My husband used like the
Yeah.
meatloaf sandwich, but whatever it
Oh,
is that you're talking about, it is the two nice things on either side of the meat that's in the middle. And the meat, and I also love how you give a really great example of how you bring up the topic in a non-blaming, non-judgmental way. You're using an I statement. I saw this. I would like more of that. What do you think about it? And as you said, so many of the fights or disagreements around sex come when people are tired, angry, upset about something else, feeling really at a deficit for connection. And so then it comes out more like that they don't mean it to come out
mm,
like vomit or an assault, but it often does. So I thank
mm,
you for offering that really important piece. Can we pivot to the part of the listener's question where they're talking about, it almost sounds like they are a bit blaming or shaming, saying, gosh, I'm not getting this need met in my intimate relationship. So I'm turning to my past and I'm thinking about these great lovers I had in the past or people who really met my needs. What would you say about that in a current relationship, that behavior?
I would say comparison is a thief of joy. And that every single person that you decide to date has different strengths and different weaknesses. And just because you haven't communicated your sexual expectations and things you want to explore with him doesn't mean that he's not down to try and improve. I think we all need to hold ourselves accountable in first learning what we want and secondly telling the other person. No one can read your mind. You can't assume that if this is the right relationship for me, they should be able to have sex with me a certain way or they should be able to sexually satisfy me. Because sex is very complex in a way. People think sex is so simple, even animals do it. You just get naked and penetration, right? But there's so many different variables that go into a good sex life. So if you're not holding yourself accountable in communicating your preferences and expectations to your partner, you cannot blame them for not giving you the kind of sex that you want.
And
So, first off, I think it's your job to then communicate with him first.
thank you for that background, and I agree on all of the points that first, we tend to think that sex is easy because all animals do it, yet humans imbue sex with so much. We imbue it with meaning, "I love you," or "You love me," "You see me," "You desire me," "I'm worthy because you're attracted to me." If you don't perform or I'm not satisfied, that means something's wrong with us. Other animals aren't doing this to
No,
themselves that I know of.
no.
They're hoping to progenerate and then, and maybe show some affection. You see it in monkeys tend to really like to show some affection in general. I'm not really aware of what monkeys do when they're copulating, but anyway.
So, I'm so curious now if monkeys experience erectile dysfunction.
It's a good question, and I wonder
I
if because they are very affectionate, they will really tend to each other, and I wonder if that now I'll have to go and Google it or something, but I wonder if that comes up in their sexual behavior, but the point being that we humans have so much going on, psychologically, both in the mental world and the emotional world that makes sex mean a lot to us, and so for this person, as you went back, I think it was Theodore Roosevelt who said, "Comparison is a thief of joy." I think that was him, but either way, I agree 100%. Whether we're comparing our relationship to somebody in a movie, somebody online, our next door neighbor, or the person in our past, we are doing ourselves and the current relationship a huge disservice because, as you said, it becomes the responsibility of the people in the relationship to be accountable for the person to say, "Hey, I'm really hungering for this." For the other person to work on putting down their defenses and coming forward and saying, "Okay, let me, I'm willing to try this," or that's a little scary for me," or whatever it is. And it's okay to be a little scared when you're going into new territory in whatever area of life. And it's okay if something doesn't feel safe or feels harmful to you. It's absolutely okay to say, "No, that sounds really scary to me. Maybe down the line I can like possibly, but right now it doesn't." But being in that place of comparing it, what do you think about this person going to the past, not for comparison, but as a source of, "Oh, this lover I had in the past touched me in this way. That felt good. So now I have one thing I can tell my partner about. I like being touched this way." So
Mhm,
you don't use the person to compare it, but you use the experience as a way of self knowledge and
mhm,
being able to express your needs. What do you think? It's a very nuanced piece. But I
mhm.
agree with you. Going to the past and thinking about other people when you're with your current partner, that's not going to take you anywhere. So, what do you think about using it as a reference point?
I think it's great to use it as a reference point. That's why I'm personally I am a supporter of having sex before marriage because I think it's difficult to discern any sort of compatibility without actually experiencing first with that person. So yeah, if you're using it as point of reference, if you're using it as self knowledge, self development, I think it's great. You can always go, oh, like after I've had sex with two of my exes, I learned these 10 things, right? Like these are my erogenous zones. This is how I love for my partner to initiate sex. This is where I would go in terms of exploration, or this is the path I would go because based on my previous relationship, this is what we did and it felt good. So all of those things are great. And I think that's the gift of dating, right? Is you learn more about yourself as you date. Not just about sex, but everything else. Your communication, your expectations, your boundaries. You learn that real life through dating, through experience.
Absolutely, and it's not that you or I are I'm just clarifying. We're not encouraging you to anyone listening to tell your partner, "Hey, well, this guy did it this way or this person
No,
did it that way.
absolutely not.
That felt really good." No,
Never
we're
bring up your past.
Oh, no, 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 not I mean, you can discuss outside, we can talk about your relationships and what you learned and what you did in general, but using it as a comparison or a discussion about sex will only make the other person feel less than or
Yeah.
compared to, and nobody likes to be compared to. That's
Oh,
one sure way to, put a hammer on sexual compatibility. So when you look at bringing this up, just like going back to the cooking metaphor or restaurant metaphor, it's like having gone to different restaurants in your life, maybe with other people. And it helps us learn our tastes. We like Thai food, we like Indian food, we like Italian. And it's like that. We don't necessarily have to say, "Oh, so and so took me to this great Indonesian restaurant," right? But we don't have to say that. We can just say, "I really prefer Indian food, or I prefer food that has, a nice California flair to it," whatever, but we don't have to say where we learned that preference.
exactly. No, bringing up the past lovers and what they did is one of the things that you should never do. I actually have a funny story of one of my past clients bringing up in the session to her husband because she got so frustrated about other things and she went for the jugular and she said,
Uh-oh.
well, here's the thing. My ex, like a pseudonym named Brian. Like, here's the thing. Brian's penis was just so much bigger than you.
Oh,
So it always felt good. So how do we even fix something like that? I was like, oh no.
you know, you can never take back comments like
No.
that. I'm not shaming your client, but really, listeners, it's so important to be it's not that none of us have ever said something that we wish we could take back, but especially when you're talking about sexuality, be really mindful because
Mm,
as research shows, the
mm,
verbal wounds are as painful. They are registered in brain imaging as physical pain. They are
mm,
felt that deeply. And so somebody being compared by the size of their penis or their breasts or their stomach or whatever it might be, when you're doing that, you are putting a wound into that person's psyche that has the power of a punch, broken bone, however they perceive it. So do take care in these discussions. I want to pivot to one more piece that I've seen come up several times, that in people's past relationships, often they were in a pattern where makeup sex, which we know on the reward cycle, getting in big fights and making up, which is almost can be a domestic violence cycle, right?
mhm,
Big fights, makeup sex, big fight. So there's this abusive quality to it that can be, if people aren't aware of it, in their psyche, they're looking back at this relationship and saying, "Oh, the sex was so great." But maybe it really wasn't that the sex was so great. It's that the power of that repeating cycle is where the neurochemicals are just going haywire and very intense. You get these surges of adrenaline and cortisol, and then the bonding afterward, and then the break, and then it's So, what do you think about? I'm not saying that this is the case with this person, I just hear it enough as
Mm,
to me, it's a big red flag, especially if you're comparing that in your psyche to your current partnership. If it doesn't have, because this one sounds like it has a very gentle feel to it. I don't know the person, but it sounds like their relationship has a very gentle, balanced feel. So
mm,
perhaps, I'm not saying that because I don't know them, but if this is one of them where they had that kind of cycle in the past, that's a tough comparison.
mhm.
What do you think about the power of that kind of cycle?
I think it's a terrible cycle to be in. I understand why that's enticing because if we think of human emotions as heat and cool, so cool is like calming and it's cool in nature. Heat is like it's hot and passionate. Within heat, there's positive and negative. Within cool, there's positive and negative. So fighting, arguing, fighting, and passionate sex, they're both in heat. So the fact that people love make-up sex after a fight or even sometimes will instigate a fight in order to gain passion to translate
Absolutely.
that into good sex, that's a very toxic cycle to be in because you are then training your brain to believe that you need this every time you need a fight every time in order to deeply connect with your partner sexually. So it's a terrible cycle to be in.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And then it makes the warm, when you have warm or using your idea of the heat,
Yeah,
there's warm and the cool, it makes a warm, loving connection seem boring.
right,
It
right.
makes it seem
It's
boring
not
because,
as intense and
yeah,
it
because,
it might not be as rewarding, quote unquote, because the low isn't that low, right? Because when you're fighting, your low is so low, so then the high seems so much better. But
yeah,
when you're just in sort of a warm, loving relationship where it's stable, where your nervous system is not shot, where it's calm, you might not think it's that exciting.
absolutely. And the other piece of that, because I think this is an often a topic that's not talked about enough, that then when you have, even if you have a very good warm relationship and you have a fight,
Mhm.
you have a disagreement. I'm big on disagreements instead of, that they're much better to do than have a fight. But even if you're
Mhm.
having a disagreement and one partner is secretly waiting for that cycle and they're trying to almost nudge it into,
Mhm.
let's get it big, let's get a
I
conflagration
see
here.
that. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's happening behind the other person saying, I'm a non-participant here. So then that person is yearning for that big, that big boom. And unconsciously, then it can bring sexual connection. But the other person's going, this is the least sexy thing in the world to me. And
Mhm.
so it can really create more disconnection. So I think that this is one time if, and I'm not saying the listener, this is their issue, but it's such a common one. Listeners, if this is a dynamic in your relationships or your partner's past, it's important to look at it as Dr. Tara was saying, as being destructive. It's not healthy. It may feel good in the moment, but you're wiring your brain more and more to believe that
Mhm.
human intimacy is about fighting and intensity,
Mhm.
not that sweet gentleness, love, passion that can make us feel really, really
Mhm.
safe.
Exactly. Emotional safety
Mhm.
leads to good sex. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And it doesn't, we're not talking about it having, I love again that you brought up you and your partner and used that as an example because the way you approached wanting to have some dirty talk is a perfect example of that's very loving, very non blaming, and it's done in a way that increases passion but
Mhm.
also safety. So
Yeah.
it's a win-win. You're not getting the intensity that comes with a fight and the destructive, abusive cycle. You're getting it through being really connective in your phrasing,
Mhm.
your energy. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful aspects of having an opportunity to talk about sex and sexuality because we can see it as part of the entire relationship. That when
Mhm.
we treat the sexual relationship as just yet another area, just
Mhm.
like feeding our partner, taking care of I'm not saying that you're, cooking for them, taking care of them in whatever ways you do, massage, just tender little, love notes or bringing coffee or whatever it might be. You can see that the sexual realm doesn't have to be different from that. Can
Yeah.
be much the same, like, "Oh, honey, do you want some chocolate chip cookies? Do you want walnuts or not?" And the same
Yeah.
thing, "Oh, now we're in the bedroom. Would you like some of this? Would you like some of that?" And now we're at the place where you started, where you were talking about the importance of playful energy.
Mhm. Playful energy.
Yeah, the
Playful energy
lightness.
is key
Oh, so key.
to a good sex life. Sex doesn't have to be serious. Serious sex is boring to me. Serious sex all the time is boring. But when you watch movies, it's typically portrayed as good sex. When you're serious and mysterious, and there's a lot of that heated mysterious energy. But when you know someone so well, you might feel like, oh, but we don't have that. Like, then how do we go from here? Playfulness, have playful sex, laugh about it, try something new. I remember the first time I brought up using lube in the bedroom with my partner. Um, he was like, "Oh, I don't think we need it." And then I go, "Well, it's not about what we need. It's also about what's fun." And I think this is fun. If you're open to trying, you can tell me afterwards if it's fun for you. When I was, doing manual stimulation for him, and then after using lube for manual stimulation, he's now a huge fan. He's now like, now he goes. Now if I'm in the mood of giving him manual stimulation, he goes, "Where's that lube?" I said, "Oh my god, do you remember the first time you were like, I don't think you need it."
Absolutely, because for so many of us, something new is scary. Something
Yeah,
as simple as lube can feel like, "Oh my god." Like, "Oh, I wasn't
right.
taught that. I don't know. I'm being bad." And when you're in the bedroom, what 2 mutually consenting adults choose to do
Mm-hmm.
is their business. It's not bad.
Exactly.
It's not good, bad, right, wrong. It's what you are doing just like in any kitchen. Whatever you wanna do in your kitchen, that's your business, that you get to do that. And so working at reducing shame, defensiveness, self-blame, maybe patterns that you learned that don't feel right to you, strictures that are holding you back consciously or unconsciously. Dr. Tara, you are amazing. This is so much fun and just so much openness and play and joy. And so thank you for being a model in your personal life and your business life about what it looks like to be someone who's truly comfortable being a sexual human being. I mean, we're all sexual, but, being comfortable with it. So thank you. Thank you. Or do you have any final pieces to share with us?
I would love to say that sexual exploration is the spice of your sex life. And it's going back to using the restaurant metaphor. You know, if you've been with your partner for an extended period of time and there's only 5 items on the menu, you might consider adding 2 other items on the menu or having 10 items on the menu, right? Whatever that is, whatever your boundaries are, whatever your kinks are, whatever your preferences are. I do want you to think about it, take an audit, maybe read my book to get some ideas. But I do encourage long term partners to consider expanding their menu.
Thank you. And just adding on listeners, if adding on 2 feels like a lot, that's okay. You can
Yeah.
start with 1. You can
You can
start with
start
a
with
half
one.
you can start with a half of 1. Think of
You
it
can
like
start with
adding
lube.
there you have it.
Everyone can use lube.
Something that feels simple, approachable, a little different enough that it makes you go, "Oh, okay, this could be yummy. I'll try it." So thank you again, Dr. Tara. Where can our listeners find you?
Yes, my website is lovebites.co. That's LUVBITES.co. My book is called How Do You Like It? A Guide for Getting What You Want in Bed. And that's everywhere where you get books. So you can get it at Barnes and Noble, you can get it on Amazon. My Instagram is the same, lovebites.co, LUVBITES.co.
Thank you. Listeners, if you do not have a pen handy or if you're driving, do not worry that you're going to miss this yummy information. You can find Dr. Tara's links in the show notes. Everything will be there. You'll be able to click, just a click, you'll be able to access her social media, her wonderful new book, and begin your journey of self exploration and exploration with your partner in this really important place of your own humanity and your own relationships. So thanks again, Dr. Tara. It has been a joy and a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You're amazing. I love you as a host. You're so calming.
Oh, thank you. And to our listeners, as always, thank you for your time, your energy, your support. It truly means so much. And you are an important human being who deserves to be happy and well loved. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And, as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.